Finally, we get to put a face to this channel. For those who are new here, I'm Creative Stan, who's been your creative guide in this creative journey. Creative Stan, creative guide. My goal is to show you that learning After Effects isn't as hard as it seems, especially with my experience in motion graphics. After Effects is a powerhouse for creating awesome visual effects and motion graphics. With this guide, you can refine your video projects or create cool animations and visual effects. Let's get started. When you open After Effects for the first time, a project window will appear, similar to opening Photoshop or Premiere Pro. It will prompt you to select what you want to do. Click New Project, name it, and choose a location to save. Here is an interface for After Effects. If you've used any of Adobe's Creative Cloud products before, then this should be familiar. On the left, you've got your project window where you throw in all your files like the video, graphics, and music. Right next to that is the composition window where I am at. It is where you can see and work on your video project. On the right, there's a panel for effects where you can mess around with text tools and fonts. At the top, there's the toolbar with all your different pointers and text tools. And then at the bottom, there's your timeline where you can see and edit the sequence of your project. So far, so good. On the left, you'll find a project panel where we can easily drop and drag all our stuff, like images, videos, and anything else we need for our project. Let's keep things organized by creating folders. Just click on this icon to do that. Now, click on the button down here to create a new composition. If you're not sure about the settings, just use 1920 by 1080, 24 frames per second, set a duration and make sure to name it. Let's call this one Intro 1. You can always change these settings later. You see the composition added to our project panel and opened in our composition. Let's start by adding our logo to the composition. If the logo is too big or small, you can select a corner dot, hold down the Shift key and drag to scale it up or down. On our timeline, right-click and select New. Here you'll find various tools. For now, select Solid. There are many ways to use a solid layer in Adobe After Effects, but one of the most common use cases is to create a colored background for your composition. Give the solid layer a name, choose the color you want and click OK. If a layer is above another in the timeline, it's visible on top of the actual video. If the logo disappears, you can put it back up by dragging it. In After Effects, you can press the spacebar to play the video. Depending on the number of assets in our composition, this might not play back in real time. You can reduce the resolution here for smoother playback. Let's set this to auto. Let's add an animation to our logo. We want it to do a simple fade in and move upwards. To start with the movement, click on this arrow and then the arrow next to transform to reveal some properties of this layer. We are going to change this over time to create our animation. To adjust the position of our logo, we can click and drag these numbers, input our values, or simply drag them into our composition window. If your goal is to be a professional animator or motion designer, you'll spend maybe 80% of your career adjusting these transform properties. They are the foundation of every single After Effects animation. We need to tell After Effects where our logo needs to be at a specific time, and we use keyframes for that. At the start of our timeline, let's move our logo towards the bottom of our screen and set a keyframe by clicking the stopwatch next to the value we want to change. All the properties that we will use will have this stopwatch next to them. Now, let's move forward 2 seconds in our timeline and drag our logo upwards. Keyframes are markers that indicate to After Effects the position of a layer at a specific point. After Effects then calculates the layer's position between these values to create an animation. To speed up the movement, you can drag the keyframe forward. If you want the movement to be slower, drag it further away. Once you've chosen the speed you want, you'll notice that our logo's motion comes to a sudden stop when it reaches the top, which doesn't look natural. Objects in the real world accelerate and decelerate when they start and stop moving. In After Effects, you can add this effect by selecting the keyframes and pressing F9 on your keyboard, which is the shortcut for easy ease. You can also find this by going to Animation, Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. Or you can right click on your timeline, Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. After applying easing, the symbol for our keyframes changes to an hourglass shape, indicating that easing has been applied. When you play it back, you'll notice some acceleration and deceleration in the movement, making it feel more natural as it eases into its final position. You'll be using that a lot in After Effects. When the timeline gets crowded with information that we don't need about our scale and rotation, we can press U on our keyboard. The action will hide every property that isn't keyframed. Additionally, we can open up the transform properties using keyboard shortcuts. S brings up the scale property, R brings up rotation, P is for position, and T is for opacity. Up here we have our toolbar. We also have various tools for drawing shapes such as ellipses and rectangles, a hand tool for moving our composition window, and a text tool for adding text to our video to convey a message or promote something. With our text tool selected, click and start typing. We can see that this creates a new text layer in our timeline. Open the character panel on the right and modify the text to be bold and slightly larger. Next, ensure the text is perfectly centered by using the Align panel and choosing Align to Composition. Then click on Align horizontally. After the logo fades in, we want the text to make a strong impression. To achieve this, select the front of our layer and drag it to start a bit after the logo animation. If you want to use this logo and text animation on a different footage, we need to pre-compose it. First, select both the logo and text layer, then go to Layer and choose Precompose. Let's name it Logo Intro. Check Move All Attributes into New Composition and click OK. Now, you'll see that these two layers have merged into one composition in the timeline, and the composition has been added to our project panel. Double click and it will reveal that it only contains our logo and text animation. Let's create a new composition in our project window and name it Intro 2. Import some other footage and then place our logo intro on top of it. You'll notice that the same animation is now visible over different footage in both Intro 1 and Intro 2, because they both contain our logo intro composition. We can go into the logo intro composition to make changes to the text. Once we go back to view either of those compositions with the footage, we see that our text is now changed in both of them. We can also make adjustments to this precomposition's transform properties. Let's open up its scale with S and drag this one down a bit smaller. So now, Intro 1 has this logo and text, but much smaller than it appears in Intro 2, which is still the same size. To render the open composition, go to Composition and click Add to Render Queue. Our timeline will switch to the render queue. Keep the render settings at best settings for the best quality. Change the output module by clicking on Lossless or H.264. Then switch the format from AVI to QuickTime and choose the format option Apple ProRes 422HQ. Click OK. This will give us a high quality render without an extremely large file size. We can also resize if needed, but for now, click OK. Next, select Output to choose the save location and then click render. This might take some time. When the bar fills up, we are done. If you've made it this far, please consider liking the video and subscribing if you'd like to see more content like this every week. Until the next one, kwaheri.